if you were a hardcore salsero in Cali, Colombia, chances were you were involved with some sort of gang or yeah, it's kind of weird. And so me and my brother just loved it. We loved the music. So of course, we ended up being in places that we shouldn't have been. Um, just kind of a dangerous situation. So at that point, my mom and dad, I guess my mom.
Hey, all right. So I am now on the line with a Mr. Bryan Rodriguez, who was born in Cali, Colombia. You currently live in Greensville, South Carolina, and you are a salsa instructor, but more so you are a cultural advocate or a cultural enthusiast for Cali, Colombia. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's correct. And
Yeah.
it's Greenville. There's no S. Greenville.
Okay. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing great, man. What about you?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. I told you earlier, man, but I really appreciate you taking time actually to talk to me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. I appreciate you doing
Hey,
this.
of course, man. So, I think, man, to start this out, man, I would be very interested to hear from you, man. What was your childhood like? What was it like growing up in Colombia, in Cali, Colombia?
So it was a mix of a lot of things, really. I have a huge family on both sides, my mom and my dad. Um, and I guess one of the things that motivated me to salsa music was definitely my family's influence. They all just, really like salsa on both sides of the family. But growing up, I wasn't wealthy. So we struggle a lot. When I was a kid, we struggled a lot. My neighborhood was definitely not the best around the area. So also had a lot of difficulty there. My brother was older. I kind of just try to follow my brother's footsteps. Um, it's a lot of trouble that came with that. A lot of tough love and tough learning. So the streets are not easy. And when I left Colombia, I was not fully into like in the streets, but I was getting there. I was to a point where I was already like out and doing stuff maybe I wasn't supposed to be doing at that age. And my brother was just kind of far ahead from me because he's 5 years older from me. So when we left, it was a really good time for us to leave. It was like almost a perfect time.
I'm gonna keep it 100, bro. I think the first time I ever heard of Cali was in correlation with Pablo Escobar, if I'm not mistaken, man.
Yeah, yeah. Sadly, we have that stereotype. Pablo Escobar died in 94, 93. I'm sorry, and to this day, we still have that stereotype, and it's been over 20 years ago. Um, and Pablo wasn't even from Cali. Pablo was from Medellin. So Cali had their own traffickers, I guess you would
The Cali
say.
cartel.
Yeah, they had the Cali cartel, yeah, and they were at war with Pablo, so it was conflicting cartels there. But that's been so long gone. We don't have one of the richest people in the world anymore. Um, so it's kind of sad that that has carried over. So that's one of my goals to try to take that perspective away from Colombia in general and just say, hey, we have a whole lot of culture that I can bring to you, and it's not just drugs.
Yeah, man, that's I was super into that stuff when I was like a little bit younger, not too long ago, honestly. But
Yeah.
yeah, I heard, it was crazy in South America, man. I heard, and so let me ask you this, man. You kind of brought it up yourself, saying that you might have been doing things you shouldn't have been doing. I guess what was the culture like in Cali when you were growing up? What was it like for you?
Uh, Man, actually, it's quite surprising because I was 14, I was 15 when I left Cali, and from maybe 13 to 15 to the time I left, I was going to clubs. I was out partying, and during those times, I'm at 13. I could go to the store, like to the gas station, and I could buy a full bottle of liquor, and they wouldn't say anything. They'll hand it to me, and I could buy cigarettes if I want. I never smoke, but they'll sell you like loose cigarettes, and you could buy that stuff. Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of weird because when you were doing those things, you didn't think maybe I shouldn't be doing this. You thought that was normal. But now when you reflect on it, now you're like, wow, why did I do all those things, you know? And I do a lot of reflection because my mom passed in 2013, and one of the things I always reflect on is like, man, my mom kind of suffer a lot from me and my brother growing up in the neighborhood, and just kind of I'm a father now, and I'm like, man, I hurt my mom so much, not that I intentionally meant to do it, but just hurt the fact of her raising us, and so I do a lot of reflection, and it's always like I can't believe I survived really. So there's a lot of things there are a lot of episodes where you think, well, I shouldn't have made it out of there, but I did. So yeah.
I definitely understand that, man, and that shows probably just a testament to the strength of your mother, man. If anything, just to be able to raise you and your brother in such a tough environment, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That, absolutely. My dad was there too. You know what? My dad still is alive, so he was there too. But my dad was on the probably what most people were doing at the time was just working. So my dad used to have two jobs actually. So he'll work at a factory, and then he'll go home and change and go back to work. So for the most part, it was my mom and my brother and I. But yeah, of course it was always tough, and we weren't wealthy, so things that we take for granted, here in the States, like I don't wear any jewelry or anything because you couldn't wear jewelry like in Colombia. If I actually used to have a choker chain, and I got robbed. Um, yeah, and a bicycle. I used to ride a bicycle to go to school, and that got robbed too. I got mugged. Um, Things like clothing, for example, like shoes. I was only allowed to have two pairs of shoes a year, and I had to use those two pairs for everything. So I played soccer. I had to go to school with them. I had to go to the club if I went to the club. Things like that. It was just two pairs of shoes. And at that time, it's like, this is just the way it is. This is just life. And but now, like I said, like I told you, when you reflect on it, now I have a thing for shoes. So on my closet, like I have an obsession with shoes. I have tons of shoes, like a bunch of shoes, just because I can buy them now. So yep.
I understand that, man. And growing up in that situation is all you know, correct? Like you don't really know any different. You don't have anything to compare it to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't have anything to compare it to. You had some people that were a little bit wealthier than you, but they were still with you. Like they were still like in the same neighborhood. And, even though they had a little bit more, they didn't, it's not like I could say, hey, I wish one day I could have as much as he does or as much as she does. Everybody was just like at the same level of, I guess you'll say poverty, but it's really not poverty. It's just like at the same social economical level. Everybody had struggle. Um, Fortunately, we owned the house, but I had a lot of friends that throughout the years I was there, they'll just rent for like 6 months or something like that, and then move out, and I never see them again. And there was just a bunch of people like that. But fortunately, yeah, we owned, so we were at my house all my life.
I understand that, man. Let me ask you this, man. What were some of your childhood hobbies. What did you enjoy doing, in your youth?
Man, we played so much soccer. It was crazy. Soccer was our outlet, our outlet from everything else, like from violence and from game violence and stuff like that. And we kind of solve a lot of game violence by playing soccer because you'll carry the ball around and stuff like that, and you go to somebody else's neighborhood and you challenge them to a soccer thing. And after that, after that, it's crazy to think about it because before you played that soccer game, you guys weren't declared enemies, but it was there. The tension was there. Like you're from that neighborhood and from this neighborhood, so we automatically don't like you. And then until that soccer game came about and we played it, and whoever won or whatever, it was cool. We were cool.
I get you, bro. I get you, man. Said soccer was pretty big. It was a very big impact for you.
Yeah, yeah. Up to this day, though, I still really love soccer. I I wish I would have taken it more seriously when I was in high school, but you don't think about those things when you're young.
I definitely understand that, man. Tell me this, man. Tell me, how important was music in your household growing up?
Man, music was everything. Music was there from the time you woke up till you went to bed, and sometimes music woke you up. Um, we did so many things with music. We had a bunch of parties at home, like a lot of parties at home. My family was very big into dancing and partying. We used to, me personally, my dad used to collect vinyls when on his younger age. So he had LP vinyls. You know what that is, right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely, definitely.
yeah. So he used to collect those, and he had like a big cabinet just full of vinyls and stuff. And on Sundays, I used to have this thing because I just kind of started liking the music so much. I started liking just investigating. I'll just grab anything randomly from his stack, and I'll put the speak. You could do this in Colombia. You can't do this here, but you put the speakers like on the balcony, and you play it for everybody in the neighborhood. So we'll do that. We would play this, put the speakers up, and I'll just grab a vinyl and started playing it without knowing what it was, but I just played it. And you can do this in the United States. You get the cops call and everything, but that was normal, and I wasn't the only person that did it. Like if I didn't do it, my neighbor would do it, or somebody on the corner would do it, and it was music, loud music. Like the weekends, it was just loud music in the streets. So definitely.
And yeah, that's it's so different, man. 'Cause I'll be honest, like I grew up in the States, North America, man, and I talk to a lot of people, and I hear how music is such a part of their culture,
Hmm.
and I imagine that's how it was for you in Cali, right?
Yeah, man, it's music. It's so embedded in the Latin culture that it's almost, when you come to the United States, you almost can't comprehend how people live without music. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially here in Greenville, where a lot of people is just conservative. And on my job, my work right now, I have to visit a lot of people, and almost nobody is listening to anything when you go to their house. Versus like here at home, we're always listening to something. Music, it's always there. Or if you go to like my uncle's whole house, or my family, my brother house, it's music. It's always there. And then you compare it here to the States, it's like, why there is no music playing, like nothing at all. So it's just kind of quiet.
I understand that, man.
Yeah.
I'm curious, man. You spoke on how important music was. I'm very curious. Uh, how much of an impact did dancing have? I guess in your life, or in your youth, or in Cali.
So when I was 12 years old, my mom, for Christmas, she gifted me a bongo. And Cali, Colombia has like a really, really good drums factory where big musicians go to buy their instruments, and she bought it from that place. And I started as a I guess you could say an aficionate musician, like an enthusiast musician, and I started playing the bongos, and that started shaping my love for music into just much more than just listening to it. At that point I started learning how to play the bongos and the cowbell, which is pretty common in Cali, in Colombia. But from there I wanted to know about the artists. Like I started reading about, okay, who plays the best bongos and why, and then it kept going from like, okay, who's the best vocal, or then who plays timbales. I love timbales. I play timbales, but I'm not as good as I am with the bongos. And I never had any formal training. Like I never went to music school or anything. So a lot of things I did was I was self-taught. Um, but yeah, it started with that, and then I started getting into the club culture, where I would, like I told you earlier, we'll go to the club and just see people dancing and stuff like that. And I started getting really interested about dancing then, and I was like, okay, this is really cool. I really want to see. And then of course, you were young and you're thinking on girls and everything. And if you dance, man, it was like you have to dance if you want to try to get with somebody. So it didn't happen if you didn't dance, especially in Cali. So yeah, and then I came to the United States, and it was kind of a setback for me musically and artistically, because I told you I came to Greenville and there was like nothing going on here in Greenville. I mean, absolutely anything. And the first couple of years, I was pretty bored. I was like, I don't have anything to do. I was kind of depressed. It's like, what do I do? Where do I go? I can't dance. I can't play I can't play music. And then I moved to Miami. Yeah, so I had family in Miami, and when I was there with my cousin, then we started going out. I was like 18 then, and then we started. Okay, let's. Miami does have a very high salsa population, and a very highly concentrated Colombian population as well. So we started going to the clubs, and we were all good street dancers, I guess you'd say, or social dancers on Colombian style. And one day we just kind of decided, hey, let's do something with this. We have this thing, we have this talent. We really don't know what it is right now, but let's just try to develop it from there. And that's when I started dancing with a group. It was in 2003, and so we formed like a dance group, a dance team. We started, practicing things that we just, we didn't know. It was just like, let's just do something. And we did it, man. We really did. We did it.
That's amazing, bro. I'll definitely want to get to that, man. But I guess I'm very curious to hear, man. I guess first off, and you might have already explained this, but what made you and your family move from Cali to Greensville? Was it just the climate in Cali, or?
Yeah, I guess my mom and dad made the decision because, like I told you earlier, we were experiencing things that was pretty much out of reach for a lot of people. And like I told you, my brother was 5 years older. Um, right before we came to the United States. My brother had actually moved out of the house on his own, and he had a car, and he was working, so he was making money, and so now he could be. My brother was like, hey, I got money. Let's go to the club. Let's go do this. Let's go do that, and I'll be riding with my brother, and a lot of places it was just dangerous stuff. We were just doing dangerous things, being in places we weren't supposed to be. Here in the States, it's a little different because salsa is more related to a family oriented kind of thing where everybody just likes each other and we're all dancing with each other. But in Cali, it's salsa. When I was growing up, salsa was more related to poor neighborhoods. So, if you were a really good salsa enthusiast and you had the knowledge and all this stuff, you'll end up hanging out with people that were very poor and they were doing, they were just, gangs and stuff like that. Because I don't know, it was just kind of weird because if you were a hardcore salsero in Cali, Colombia, chances were you were involved with some sort of gang or yeah, it's kind of weird. And so me and my brother just loved it. We loved the music. So of course, we ended up being in places that we shouldn't have been. Um, just kind of a dangerous situation. So at that point, my mom and dad, I guess my mom more than anybody realized that we were leaving home. Like I was leaving the house to go to school, and I had an afternoon schedule for school. Like on Fridays, I would leave the house to go to school, and then I wouldn't come back home till like Saturday. You know, and so my mom just she started seeing all this, and she's like, she realized, well, I'm losing my kids. I'm losing them to the streets pretty much. So they started making all the arrangements and everything. And it was a tough process, man. Everybody that just kind of talks BS about immigration, they never experienced what we had to experience and what millions of people have to experience. But it was a very, very tough process just to make it here. And then once we were here, it was even harder then. But yeah, they made the decision, and they we left everything behind, man. We left the house, we left a lot of our belongings, furniture, everything, all that stuff. We just kind of left all that behind. We put it on a storage unit, and then we left the house.
Oh man, see, I got a lot of questions for you, man. I definitely want to talk about, you know, that whole immigration process, man, because I know nothing about that, man. But real quick, you said that, if you were a hardcore salsero, you were kind of that was more so associated with, like, I guess, like the poorer class. So yeah,
Yes.
you're saying that, I guess, the wealthy, I guess, weren't really into dancing, weren't really into salsa music, or is that what you're saying?
No, they were. They just weren't involved as much as we were. So for them, it was just, it's just music, and it's just, it's just a party. But the people that got just kind of like me, that you wanted to know about the artist, and you want to, I had my dad that used to collect vinyl and stuff like that. So if you were very deep into it, um, kind of like the underground hip hop scene, if you know what I mean. So when I compare a lot to hip hop because they had like a similar upbringing, from social economical statuses. So there's people that like hip hop, but there's not a whole lot of people listen to the underground stuff. So, and when you get into the underground hip hop scene, then you start associating yourself with people that they do these things that are illegal per se. So it was similar to salsa in Cali, Colombia. And so just so you know, Cali it's known to be the world salsa capital. And a lot of people confuse that because when they think that when we say that is because we produce a lot of salsa, which is not true. We do produce salsa, but we don't produce a lot. But we call it the salsa capital because of our knowledge and our consumption of salsa. So if you ever go to Cali, you're riding a cab, they're listening to salsa. If you ride the bus or something like that, a public transportation, they're gonna listen to salsa. And we have over 250 just in Cali alone, 250 dance schools recognized by the government, just in Cali alone. And then we have another 200 that are like underground schools, not underground, but they're not registered as schools in the neighborhoods and everything. So we consume a lot of salsa. We have clubs from Monday to Monday. and all they play is salsa. That's all they play. They don't play merengue, they don't play bachata. We have regular clubs, but we have about, I don't know, like 100 salsa clubs in the city of Cali alone, you know. So that's a huge consumption. We have festivals like you have no idea. Like we have Feria de Cali. It's one of the main ones that happens in December, and it's all surrounded by salsa. So it's just crazy, really.
That's amazing, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah. I always tell people if you really want to experience salsa, go to Cali, Colombia, because people know the songs, people know the artists. Just out of anything, you play them a salsa song, and a kid in the street can tell you, hey, that song such and such sings it, and that's the name of the song, and it came out in such year and stuff like that that normal people wouldn't know. But because we're so embedded into it, we have that knowledge.
Okay, man, that's pretty cool, man. I definitely I want to hear about your, yeah, I guess your immigration process to the States, man. I know you kind of said it, it was, I guess difficult. For someone like myself, who has never had to experience something like that, can you kind of just describe what that process was like?
Yeah, so I'm actually still on the process, really, right now. So we came to the States. We had a tourist visa. I guess the tipping point for us to come was my dad was um I guess he was fired, but he wasn't really fired. He was more like laid off from his job. And when they do that, we have like a social program where if you've been at a company for so long, if they fire you, they have to give you a certain amount of money. Um, and so we were fortunate that my dad had that, and we knew they were going to terminate him. So he just kind of signed the process, and they gave him the money, and that was the tipping point. That was like, okay, now we had to figure something out. So um, my mom made all the processes. So we had to get passports, which was an ordeal on its own, because the government in Colombia is so messed up that you have to go through so many hoops just to get a passport. Then we got the passport, and then we had to go to the capital of Colombia, and we drove there from Cali to Bogota. Bogota is the capital, and we had to get our visas, and they interview you. So they interview the family, like, why are you trying to go to the United States? And I guess you kind of have to lie at one point, and it's like, well, I don't have any intentions on staying um, in the United States or whatever. And then you get a tourist visa, which is the initial intention. You're just gonna go visit United States and then come back to Colombia. Um, and so we did that, and then can you still see me?
Oh yeah, bro, my fault. Yeah, I can see.
Okay. And so we did that. We got our passports, we got our visas, we left everything. Like I told you, we had to get rid of a bunch of stuff, and you know, I said bye to everybody. I guess family members, friends. I was in I was in high school, and I was on 10th grade, which in Colombia you only go to high school till the to junior year, so you only go to 11. So I was missing one year for graduation in Colombia, and I didn't get to do it. And so that was kind of bummed, because I went to school with, it was a bummer because I went to school with kids from elementary, and I was still in school with them till 10th grade, and I didn't get to graduate with them. So that was pretty sad. Um, and we came to the States. My father came first. My dad came first, by himself. Actually, my mom came first. I'm sorry. My mom came first. She stayed here for like a month, and then she came back to Colombia, and she was like, "Well, yeah, it looks like we're gonna go back over there." Then my dad came. He stayed. He was here for like 3 months, and then my brother, my mom, and I came in August. We got to Miami on August the 1st on the year 2000. We stayed in Miami for a couple of weeks with some friends, and then we came to Greenville, where my dad was already here. So my dad you don't know how to do things when you recently come to the United States. So my dad had rented an apartment and he was renting furniture. So we had, chairs. I don't know if you remember those times, but like rent a center, stuff like that. I don't know if people still do that or not. But he had rented beds, he had rented furniture, he had rented a TV. Um, and when we got there, my mom's like, why are you renting all this stuff? And so that was part of our process. So then my dad gave everything back, and then we didn't have anything. We had one TV, and I remember I brought my PlayStation from Colombia because I was not about to leave my PlayStation. So I brought my PlayStation. We had a VHS that my dad had bought here in the States. And so one of the things we did just for my brother and I to be entertained, we'll go to Blockbuster and rent a movie and bring it back. And you couldn't do these things in Colombia. It's so weird because there's so many things that are so different. Like in Colombia, you could rent a movie, but there was no Blockbuster was super expensive, so nobody went to Blockbuster. And here it was like Blockbuster was the only place you could go to get a movie. So everything was so weird. And then the food started changing. My mom would still cook at home, but we drink juice, natural juice, every single day in Colombia. And then when we came here, it was like, we can't find the fruit to make the juice, and you have to just buy the juice from, orange juice or whatever, or Coke. I've never drank so much Coke in my life, man. And I was like, at the beginning it was kind of cool because we never had Coke in Colombia. That was something special, like a special occasion that we'll have Coke. And here in the States, everybody's drinking Coke, and I was like, after a couple of months, I'm like, I want my juice back. I want to have lunch with juice. But anyways, we came here, and it was a struggle for me and my brother mostly because we at that time we wanted to go out and we wanted to go to the club and go partying and stuff like that. And my brother could because he was older, but I couldn't. If I went to the club, actually I tried to go a couple of times, and they'll send me back at the door. They're like, "Nah, you're too young, man. What are you even doing here?" I went to I'm sorry, I went to one club one night, I remember, and one of my friends gave me his ID, and he's like, "Here, just show this ID." And so I'll go in, and I'm playing stupid, and the cop stops me, and he says, "If you don't leave now, I'm gonna arrest you." And I was like, okay. So I just turned around and left. Yeah, man, it was pretty sad, man. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends or nothing like that. But anyways, on the immigration process,
Well, hold
we
on, hold
came.
on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ah, you said a lot there, man. I wanted to ask you, did you speak Spanish? I'm sorry, did you speak English when you got here?
So I've always liked the English language, and um, we had English classes in Colombia, just like a second language. And I actually learned a lot in Colombia because I really like the language. So it was easier for me when I came to the States than most people. It was easier for me than most people because I had a very good understanding of English when I came. And I was in, this area is you don't speak any Spanish at all. If you go to the store or anywhere like that, it was all English. So I kind of I had to learn. So I went to high school here for 2 years. And usually when you come to the States, because you don't speak good English, most people get put back a year before. So I was gonna be when I came here, I was supposed to go to 11th grade, and and that was just my natural process. But most people they get sent back, so I didn't get that. I got into 11th grade because they did like a English test, and they're like, yeah, well, you know enough, but you can just continue your process. But most people get sent put back to like a year before. So
Let me I'm very curious to hear about this, man. You kind of spoke on uh how it was difficult for you and your brother, man. But I'm very, very curious to hear, man. What was that first year like moving to America? What was
Hmm.
that like for your parents? How was that for them?
Mm, I remember they were working a lot, man. They were working nonstop, nonstop. My mom, my mom in Colombia, well, she did it here too in the United States. She was a seamstress, so she saw, and that was her job, and she did it at home. So she was always home with us and just working, but she was working at home. And then when she came to the States, it was like, well, now you have to go clean toilets. Now you have to go, collect trash at offices or something like that. My dad, I remember he was washing dishes. My dad was head of security in Colombia, so he had a good job. And he went to school for medical stuff in Colombia. But when they got here, it was like, well, none of that. You can't do none of that here. You have to work. And of course, most people start out by not having any documents, so they had to fabricate a social security number that didn't exist, and my mom did the same thing. And they I guess they worked illegally for a long time. But it was very hard for them. I remember we didn't have any cell phones at the time. So there was no communication with me or my brother. I'll just kind of go. Went to high school, and they just kind of hope I was okay. And then yeah, I mean, because there was no way to, once I left for high school, and the school bus picked me up, they had no idea how I was. They knew they had to pick me up a certain hour, and sometimes that didn't happen, man. Sometimes I waited. I stayed outside for 2 or 3 hours just waiting on my mom and dad, somebody to pick me up. Sometimes I didn't even know who was going to pick me up. I just waited there until somebody that I recognized showed up. Um, so it was very tough for everybody. I remember one time in particular, I went to a trip with school. I did ROTC in school, and I was on the drill team. And so we went to a trip with them. And it was like a weekend kind of thing. And that weekend, we were moving apartments. We were going to a better apartment. And when I came from the trip, I had no way to talk to my mom and dad and tell them, hey, I'm here, come pick me up. And so somebody dropped me off at the old apartment. And when I got there, there was nobody there. And I was like, I had no idea what to do, man. I had no idea what to do. And I stood there. I was, keep in mind, I was 16 years old, just kind of walking around the apartment complex looking for somebody. And finally, somebody showed up, and I was like, I don't know where my mom and dad are at. And so, uh, got to a phone or something, and finally we talked to him. But it was an all day process. I was just kind of lost pretty much. Uh, and so, you could imagine when you're a father, or, your mom doesn't, if I don't know where my kids are at right now, I'll freak out. I'm like, okay, I'll have a panic attack. So you could imagine how my mom and dad felt. Um, but it was very tough. And then eventually we applied for, because of gang violence and because of the guerrillas that are in Colombia. Um, we applied for what's called political asylum, and that was kind of very famous during that time frame, and that's how we started our process to legalization. That I told you, to this day I'm still on that process. So it's been 20 years since that. Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Hmm.
Um, you spoke on how when your parents got here, man, that they kind of had to pretty much start over, and I think it shows. It's kind of amazing that they were willing to do that. Willing to give up everything they had in Colombia just to come here and start again, start anew, because I guess they realized that it would be a better opportunity for you and your brother, as well
Hmm.
as for them. That's super like amazing to me, man.
Yeah, yeah, man, definitely a lot of resilience there. because my mom and dad were older when they did that move. They were in their late 40s, and they don't speak the language. They my dad had a brother here in Greenville. That was very helpful. That was very helpful. But and then we came over and I started learning English. And I was good at it. I pretty much had to do everything for my mom and dad when it came to like filling out paperwork, documentation. All the mail I had to read it or interpret it the best I could. Um, and I remember up till my mom passed, it was hard for her to cope because she still didn't speak very good English. And unfortunately, when you don't speak good English and you're an immigrant, you get taken advantage of. There's just nowhere around that. It's just the way it is. And like I told you, we just kind of thought it was normal, but we were happy because what we made here, or what my mom and dad made here, was like a lot in comparison to what they made in Colombia. So even though they were taken advantage of, they were still pretty happy. They're like, who cares? But mind you, they were working a lot. Like I told you, they were working 12-hour days. Yeah, they were just working a lot for pennies. Now that I think about it, they were just working for pennies. Um, but comparing to the life we had in Colombia, for them, this was a lot better. For my brother and I, it wasn't because we just kind of our the fun part got taken out of the equation. It was like there's nothing for us to do anymore. There's no music, there's no salsa. There were a couple of Latin clubs here in Greenville, but like I told you, they wouldn't let me in, first of all, and second of all, they wouldn't play the good salsa, the underground salsa that we wanted to listen to. So man, I the first time I was allowed in a club, I remember I sat there and I teared down because the music was so horrible. I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" They were playing cumbias and they were playing bachata that started becoming popular back then, and they were playing merengues. And you come from an environment that they play is salsa all night, and you sit down there and you have to listen to all this other cumbia and stuff like that, and I was like, what am I doing here? I don't want to be here. So there were several times that I was like, that I told my mom and dad, I think I'm better off if I just go back to Colombia because I don't want to be here. And it was actually considered for a while. I remember our first Christmas year here, we went to New York for celebration. We have family in New York, New Jersey, and we went over there, and that was my first time being in cold weather, and it was cold. Shit, man, it was cold. New York was cold, 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 and the wind was blowing so hard, man, that I could feel my ears crack behind. And it was like, oh my, I was like, what is this? Why is it so cold in here? And there's a video of me back in those days, and I got sick. Actually, I got sick on New Year's Eve. I got sick because it was so cold. So I guess I had the flu or something like that. And Christmas and New Year's are a very important time in Colombia, and there's a lot of partying during those times. I mean, you wake up and it's a party. You know what I'm saying? From Christmas Day. Well, actually, it starts in like on the 8th of December, which is like a Virgin Mary celebration, some crap like that. Um, and it's a party all month of December. Nobody works, stuff like that. And then in here, it's like, nah, it's not like that. Christmas is like you sit down in the living room with your family and you open gifts, and that was it. And I was like, why are we not partying? It's Christmas Eve, and it was New Year's. And so there's a video of me on New Year's Eve, and I was sick, and they recorded me. They're like, "Hey, you wanna give a shout out to the people in Colombia because they were gonna send the video in Colombia." And I was like, "Yeah, don't come to this fucking place. United States sucks ass. If you can't stay in Colombia, don't come here. I swear, dude, that's what's on that video, man. And I've seen that video so many times. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, man, I hated it here. I really did. I hated it here for the first couple of years, man. I did.
I understand, man. I definitely understand. That's super tough to leave your home country and then go to a different country where the native language isn't your native language. Man, that's a super tough experience to go through, man. I can only imagine what that's like, man. So I understand.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to ask you this, man. Oh, I want to ask you
Yeah. Go
this real
ahead.
quick, man. You're a little bit older. You're a little bit wiser now, man. I'm very curious to hear from you. Looking back on your childhood, how do you think that has like affected or influenced the person who you are today?
Well, one of the things I am for is that has influenced me is that I'm very grateful for the things I have because I come from nothing. I literally come from nothing. And so anything after that was a plus. And when you start getting those pluses consecutively, um, it creates an impact where you're very thankful. I'm very fortunate to be where I'm at. Even I'm not a millionaire. I do well at work or whatever, but I see the people in Colombia and they're like, I don't know if I can make rent this month, you know, and I don't have that, you know. Or I see people in Colombia and they're like, for example, I just bought a bike. It was like $1,000 bike. And I'm like, the first thing I thought about when I bought this bike, because I started doing mountain bike recently, but first thing I thought about it was like, if I have this bike in Colombia, I would get shot for it, or somebody would try to mug me and try to stab me for this bike. And I don't have that here. I can ride this bike almost anywhere here, and it'll be normal. But some, things like kicks, you wouldn't believe it, but people, when I was growing up, if you have a nice pair of shoes, they will rob you, and you'll pretty much walk barefooted back home. So my brother got his tennis shoes taken a couple times in Colombia, and of course, that doesn't happen here. So all of those things make me appreciate a lot more. So I have I want to say I have a broad aspect of reality because I have two different realities. The one that I experienced when I was younger, and the reality I'm experiencing now. Um, so yeah, definitely a lot of appreciation, man. And not just materialistic stuff. Just the fact that that I could raise a family that like I told you, my mom and dad struggle. They never struggled with like putting food in our table, but just buying normal things. I could buy my kids whatever they ask for. But that's a decision I make. Consciously make it. I can, my daughter asked for a pair of sneakers or whatever, and I can tell her, yeah, you're gonna get them, or you're not gonna get them because of this. Versus when I told my mom, hey, I want this, I want to buy this, my mom will say, we don't have any money, you know. So it was not her decision. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of use that stuff right now because I know I have certain power to buy certain things. So I use that power to kind of work with my kids. But my mom didn't have that. So, she didn't have that power. So what was she gonna do? It was just, I knew the answer already, so I wouldn't even ask, you know, and and it's just it makes you appreciate life a whole lot more.
Have you there's this saying, I don't know, I don't want to get it wrong, but it's like, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think what it means is like, your kids are able to live, somewhat comfortable, I'm pretty sure more comfortable than you are, all because of what your parents were able to sacrifice, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get that. And like I told you, my dad still struggles. So after my mom passed, he didn't want to live here in Greenville because of the memories that the city brings him. So he went to Miami, and Miami, it's easier for him because a lot of people speak Spanish over there. So rather than, I guess it's a little bit of laziness, but it's not just that. It's just he's older, and he doesn't really have the will to learn English. You know what I'm saying? And so he's like, it's easier for him, so he's just gonna stay there. So people are, like I told you earlier, people that bash immigration and how everything go. I wish they really went through that process. You know what I'm saying? And at least a certain portion of it, so that they can see, okay, this is actually really, really hard to do. And we got lucky. We were fortunate. We got very lucky. There's people that have it even worse than what we did. There's people that walk a desert to get here. With their kids. So man, it's just a tough thing, but like I told you, at the end of the day, all this is a learning process. And then you know I'm not at the finished goal yet, but all this, everything that, like you said, that my parents sacrificed, and then when they came here, they continue to sacrifice. um, their sacrifice has made my life easier. So
I definitely understand that, man. I
mm.
definitely do, bro. Um, and I guess we kind of got away from why we originally wanted to talk, man. But so yeah, so you moved to the U.S. Um, I guess when when or how do you start to get back into dancing? When does that start to become a part of your life again?
Yeah, so I moved to the States, and like I told you, I had that setback because there was nothing in here.
Hmm.
And when I graduated from high school, I knew I didn't want to stay in Greenville. I'm like, this town is way too small for me. There's nothing for me going on. So I visited a couple places. I visited New Jersey, Elizabeth, because I have family over there, and I was like, I went to one club in Elizabeth, and it was like, oh my God, this is where I want to be. So I was making preparations to go to Elizabeth, and then my cousin in Miami, he's like, come see us, come for a weekend or something. And I did that, and I went to Miami, and my cousin is like my brother. My cousin and I grew up together. And when I got there, and we also went clubbing, and I was like, okay, this is it. So I moved to Miami. As soon as I graduated from high school, I moved to Miami, and I was living with my cousin and his family. It's kind of crazy because you wouldn't believe this, but it was 11 people on a two-bedroom apartment
Oh man.
in Miami, and I was paying, I don't know, like $200 rent. And my cousin and I used to sleep on the couch with his dad, my uncle. Used to sleep in the living room, and then just a bunch of family on the rest of the rooms. But I didn't care because we would go out every weekend, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We would started living the salsa club scene in Miami, and I was man, it was amazing. There was one club that I still like. Wish that club would still be here, but it was a Saturday night. It was called Ballroom. It was just like a ballroom place, and it was salsa, Colombian style, 100%. And from that, like I told you earlier, we started seeing that, hey, we dance and we have this ability that not a whole lot of people do. So let's start working on this. And so we started putting a group together. It was my cousin and I, and then I met my wife back then too. She was my first dance partner, and then a couple of other young kids at the time. And so we put a group together, and we started like organizing. We started trying to choreograph to the best of our knowledge. And man, and then we finally did it. We had a group, and then our first show in 2003 was the Colombia's Independence Day Festival. We're talking about 10,000 people, man, and that was our first show. And we didn't know, we didn't know much back then, but we were pretty good for what we were the only group at the time in Miami, the only Colombian style group. So I guess we were kind of pioneers of that. And so I did that in Miami. Then I came back to Greenville, um, and I had all this knowledge of dancing already and putting choreography together. And when I moved back to Greenville in 2005, someone opened up a Latin dance studio here in Greenville, and I reached out to him, and I was like, I've been dancing in Miami for a couple of years now. So he kind of hired me as an instructor and a choreographer for his recently opened studio. So then I also pioneered. What was that?
All right, I didn't say anything, bro. I'm listening.
And so I also, in 2005, I pioneered Colombian style here in Greenville, with that studio. And we worked in here in Greenville for a couple of years, and then I moved back to Miami, and I did a little bit of more work over there. Um, then came back to Greenville. I've left Greenville maybe like three times, and I always end up coming back, man. Um, and then I came back to Greenville. I had my kids then. I kept working here in Greenville as a dancer and choreographer and all that. Moved to Houston in 2009, and I pioneered Colombian style in Houston. There was no Colombian style when I got to Houston. This was in 2009, 2010, 2011. I performed in Houston on the Texas Salsa Congress and the Houston Salsa Congress, which are pretty huge congresses. Um, so I performed there, and I did a lot of other performances in Houston. Um, and then when my mom got ill, she had cancer. We had to move back to Greenville in 2012. The end of 2012, we moved back to Greenville, and my mom finally passed in 2013, and we just kind of stayed in Greenville after that. And since I guess in 2012, 2013, I started moving in the southeast coast area. Anywhere from Florida all the way up to New York. I did Virginia Beach. I've done Wilmington. I've done Atlanta several times. Atlanta, Charlotte, Columbia. I actually had with a friend from Colombia. We actually did a competition, like a Southeast competition. It was called the Southeast Salsa Open. We only did it 1 year, but we put that together. We send the winners of that competition. We send them to compete in Puerto Rico. Everything, all expenses paid. And I mean, I've been doing a whole lot of the Southeast. I went to Alabama. I've been in Memphis, just places that you would never think there's salsa dancing over there. I've been to. I've been to so many places, man. It's crazy now that I think about it.
I'm curious, man. Tell me, or can you tell me, how is, Cali salsa, Colombian salsa, how is that different than, what we have in the States, on one salsa, onto New York style, LA style? Can you put that into words?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. So the first thing that pops into people's minds is the speed. Um, so there was a phenomena that happened in the late 70s, the beginning of the 80s in Cali, Colombia, where someone, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint who did it or who started it, but you've heard boogaloo, right? The rhythm. And then here in the States, boogaloo is more of a cha-cha thing on a slow tempo and more like bluey, jazzy kind of music, right? So someone in Cali, in Colombia, played a boogaloo, but it was too slow for us. So they they sped it up, and so they made it faster, and the voice sounds like the voice sounds kind of like that because they didn't have any equipment to speed up the music without distorting the voice. So they speeded it up, and when you listen to boogaloo in Colombia and Cali, it's very different from what's in the States. And so boogaloo is like super fast in Colombia, and the voice is distorted. And in here it's slow. So the first thing that pops in people's heads is, well, it's fast. First of all, it's fast. The second thing is the intricate footwork. So where on one and on two, um, there is footwork, but it's not as intricate. And the on one and on two kind of have a schematic of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you almost never get out of that square. But in Colombia, we go one and two and three and four and five and six and seven and eight, and we kind of tap on each one of the beats. So it creates a plethora of footwork when you can use each beat. When it started developing, and when we started bringing Colombian style into the United States, there was no timing. So there wasn't a set timing. So you wouldn't dance on one or dance on two. You would just dance to whatever beat you felt at the moment. Um, and we were criticized for this for years. Like we were blasted. So the first world salsa champions, friends of mine, Ricardo and Viviana, in 2005, they won the ESPN salsa championship. That was the first time the world saw Colombian style, and they won that championship on the cabaret division. And everybody was like, what is this? What are these guys doing? What timing are they dancing on? Are they even counting? And after they won it, the next couple of years after that, the judges started getting smart, and they're like, well, these guys are not on a consistent timing. They're like, this timing is not correct. So we got blasted for that. And so when it first came to the States, there was no timing. And so we had to, people like me and some other colleagues, instructors in the United States, we had to kind of structure Colombian style to fit on one. So what we'll do is we'll take the whole 8 count, we'll work on our footwork, and then we had to find a way to get back to on one. So the footwork and the timing was the second thing. The third thing is that we're the only style that does footwork while partner work, while dancing with a partner. So if you notice on one and on two, if you're dancing with a partner, all you're doing is turn patterns, but you don't grab your partner and signal her to do the same footwork you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So Colombian style does that. I grab my partner and I start doing footwork, and she follows my footwork, and it looks like it's choreographed. It's not choreographed. It's just social dance. So that was that. And then lastly, we have, man, we do so many tricks, like lifts and tricks, and it's absolutely insane, crazy tricks. So we grab a lot of, because we've been dancing for such a long time, we grab a lot of tricks from like cheering competitions, from hip hop, from ballet, and we kind of incorporated that into salsa dancing. So I think those are the three main things. The footwork, the partner work, and the timing and the tricks and the lifts.
I am. I've seen Colombian salsa, man, and it is, I guess extravagant is one way to put it, man. It's
Yeah,
and it's
that's a
a
perfect way.
workout. Yeah,
Yes,
man.
yeah, it's definitely a workout. That's always the thing I get the most when I teach a class. People wanna when they it's funny because people come to class and they're wearing jeans and they're wearing nice shoes and stuff like that. And the first thing I tell them is like, you know, lose the jeans, go put some sweatpants on, and put your sneakers on because this is not your normal salsa class. And at the end of the class, they're like, yeah, this is a workout.
I want to ask you, man. I want to kind of get into some hints and tips for dancers out there, man. I'm very curious to hear from you, man. For a lead, actually, let's make it for leads and follows. We'll start with that for leads and follows, and this can be for pretty much any. This can be translated to any type of Latin dance, man. How can someone improve their footwork? What's the best way to go about that?
Improve their footwork. Um, I don't want to sound braggy, but definitely learn Colombian style footwork. That is going to broaden your aspect of music, and musicality is gonna go off the ceiling when you learn Colombian style. At least know the basic stuff. One thing I'm very critical of dancers is I told you we were blasted for several years about not having our timing. So we learned that. So we're like, okay, the world wants us to have timing. So we learned that. So I can dance on one, on two. I can dance on three if I wanted to. So I learned all the timing and I incorporated it into Colombian style. But dancers and instructors now don't take the time to learn Colombian style. So for years, they blasted us to learn their stuff, and we did, but they never took the time to learn our stuff. So I'm very critical of that. But one of the things, and don't get me wrong, not everybody. There are some dancers that have taken the time, like some big stars, like Fernando Sosa has done Colombian style. Edwin, I forgot his Edwin Rivera has done Colombian style a little bit, and a little bit is enough for people to have an understanding. So for footwork, definitely Colombian style is a master class. Definitely. Just because we try to accentuate every single timing of the music. And I explained to you that square. I have a video that I recommend you watch it, but I break down on a piece of paper how the timing works and how Colombians break out of that square and go back to the square. So I'll send you the link of that video. Um, Now, is that what you wanted to ask? How to improve the footwork, right? Yeah. And then obviously to me, practice is key. All the people that go to congresses and go to festivals and stuff like that, they take a class on a Saturday morning and they never practice it. So Colombian style requires a lot of practice, you have to almost reformat your brain to think differently. And then once you think differently, you have to reformat to your brain to go back to your original thinking. So you're going back and forth. But people don't do that. I've taught so many classes throughout the years, and I hardly ever see anyone doing one of the stuff that I taught.
I understand, man. People want the easy path, right?
People want the easy path, and Colombian style is not easy.
So I want to ask you this then, man. So we spoke a little bit about footwork. Let me ask you this, man. For someone who wants to become a better leader, what words of advice, or what hints or tips do you have for them to become a better leader in social dancing?
It's a really good question, man, and it's a question that the salsa scene has been struggling for years on the same thing. Um, One of the things I like to talk about is to drop down your arrogance or your ego, right? Um, a lot of people think, they took a class and they know how to dance. right? But when they start the social dancing, you get so many perspectives of dance because each individual person has a different perspective. And when you go to social dance and you go with this level of arrogance where, I've been dancing for so long already, I know more than the person that I'm going to ask to dance. And you have this conflict of you have this the energy conflict, right? Where you know more, or the dancer that you're leading actually knows more, but you want to lead her anyways. So the first thing that I would recommend was drop down your arrogance and read your partner, right? Um, when you perform and people see you on the stage, and you drop down to social dancing, you come down to social dancing, you get people that ask you to dance.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people don't really know how to dance. Um, but if you go with that mentality, hey, this person doesn't know how to dance, your lead doesn't matter how good you think you are of a lead. If you don't drop that arrogance, your lead is going to suck, right? Um, so that's one of the main things. A lot of people don't take classes on leading, and this is important because when you go to a congress, people want to take a turn pattern class and a footwork class, but they don't want to take an energy class. They don't want to take just like your body weight. How do you change your body weight from one position to the other? How do you complement your partner with your body weight? Do you stand up? Do you stand up tall, or do you sit back and wait for the movement? You know. So all these theory classes people don't like to take, which that's a huge mistake. The first thing you need to, a lot of people, and I've always said that, a lot of people teach you moves, but they don't teach you how to move, right? And when these classes come about, people don't take them. So the second thing I will tell any lead would be, okay, you know all these turn patterns, you know all this footwork. Now you need to know how your energy works. How do you move with the floor? How do you move with your partner? How do you read your partner's intentions? Because leading is not just me carrying you around the dance floor. Leading is grabbing both people's energies and taking it in a certain path, right? So I'm not just telling a dance partner, hey, let's go this way. I'm going to tell her, where do you want to go? Okay, I want to go that way too. Let's go together, right? So all this energy, all this transition and all that, take those classes. Definitely take those classes.
Nah, that's powerful, man. That's very true. I wanna let me this man. I want to ask you for followers. I want to give followers some tips, some advice on how to become better followers. So I want to ask you in this way, man. Um, in your opinion, what makes for a good follow?
What makes a good follow? Well, see, here's the thing. I think the whole concept of leading and following, um, it's a misinterpretation of dance. I think we put in roles where there shouldn't be a whole lot of roles. If you put a lead and follow role, then you make it seem like lead, that's all you're gonna do. You're gonna lead, and follow, that's all you're gonna do. You're gonna follow. But it shouldn't be that way because dance is a complement of each other, right? Um, so where a person can lead sometimes, a follow can also lead, right? Or when a lead leads, a lead can also follow. Um, but you have to have this conversation of energies and energy transition. Are you doing this and I'm following you, or am I doing this and you're going to follow me, right? So for follow, it's very important that they don't back lead a movement, right? So when you're back leading, what you're doing is you're receiving a certain energy, and what you do with the energy is you push it back. So as a follow, you should receive that energy and interpret it, and just move with that energy, right? But like I told you, I'm not very keen of the concept of lead and follow, especially in the salsa industry, because if I'm dancing with someone that's very advanced and I'm leading, but she's much more advanced than I'm gonna let her kind of take the lead into it. I'm gonna show her the way, but I'm gonna let her lead it. Just because I understand she has much more knowledge than I do. Um, but I don't know. I think we have to reformat that lead and follow kind of thing. And this is it's good that we're having this conversation because these conversations don't happen a lot.
That's very true, man. That's very true.
Yeah.
Um, so let me ask you this real quick, man. When I say the word musicality, what does that mean to you?
Another concept that's messed up. um, eh, I play bongos. I told you that, right? I'm a percussionist. I don't do it professionally, but I know how to play percussion, and I know about music, and know about compass, and I know about timing and stuff like that. So when there's people that will tell you, well, musicality is, or they wouldn't tell you, but you go to a musicality class, and they teach you choreography based on certain instrument. That's not musicality. To me, musicality is learning about the music, learning about where the music comes from, and how it was interpreted. So if you're playing a son or a son montuno from Cuban origins, and you understand that son breaks on two, and it's not the regular mambo New York on two, but it's rather contratiempo, which means they dancing on the even beats like the 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, right? So learning that stuff, like learning, okay, son is dance on this timing, and it breaks off differently from mambo. That is musicality to me. It's understanding the position of the composition of the music and interpreting each section. So one person I always take his class, a good friend of mine. His name is Beto. I don't know if you know him, Beto Herrera from Mambo Dinámico. Um, and I encourage you to reach out to him for your future podcast. He's very very knowledgeable. But Beto has a musicality class, and he teaches you how the music is composed, and he teaches you this is the beginning of a salsa song, which is starts, and I learned this from him. So a typical salsa song will have a son, and then it'll have a montuno, and then it'll have a mambo section, and then it'll drop down. And he breaks all that down for you, and he tells you, okay, in the son part you're gonna do this, in the montuno part you have to do this, and the mambo part you do this, and then we go back to son. So his class is amazing, and what he actually does is he explains the different musical compositions with the different instruments. So he actually have instruments in the class, and he'll tell you, okay, I'm gonna play this takata, and he'll play it, and then he'll explain the movement. This is what you need to do when I play this. So that's my concept of musicality. It's knowing the music and knowing what you're dancing to and how you're supposed to dance it to. So a lot of people, we kind of have to remind people that salsa started as a religious thing. I'm not religious, but a lot of the salsa music is rooted in religious traditions. And so it's kind of almost disrespectful, right? When you have certain rhythm playing and you're dancing it completely different, because at this point you're disrespecting the tradition. So
That's super important. And that's something that can be kind of lost, especially like here in North America, man, where you just, I'm be honest with you, like, for myself, man, I kind of can sometimes just view this as a dance. When to some people it's a part of their culture, it's a part of their religion, perhaps, man. It's so much more than just a dance to them.
right.
So I understand that.
Yeah. And I'm not to say that I'm perfect, right? So sometimes they play a song that has two or three different rhythms within it, and I may not hit all the rhythms, right? Because you're social dancing and stuff like that. But I think it's very important to have the knowledge, so when you're teaching it, you can educate the next person, and it's not just like, hey, yeah, just do this turn pattern and do this footwork, and you're a salsa dancer. It's more about this music came from religion, and when we do this move here, we're actually worshiping a god that meant something for them. So you kind of have to respect that. For example, guaguancó is a rhythm it's in a lot of songs. It's in a lot of salsa songs. And guaguancó it comes from the Yoruba religion, and it's to praise gods. And the guaguancó part comes in the music, and people are still dancing salsa, right? So not to say that I'm perfect. I do it too. We all do it at some point, but it's important to have the knowledge so that you can interpret the knowledge and send the knowledge over to your students.
And I say, unfortunately, that's probably a big portion that kind of gets lost in translation, where people just want to learn the dance. They want to learn the steps, the patterns, the turn patterns and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand. Let me ask you this final question, man. Um, can you give me one tip that can make anyone a better dancer immediately?
Learn a musical instrument, and especially I would say percussion, because I've been a percussionist for a long time. But the piano, if you can learn basic piano stuff, salsa related, because piano has, you play piano in any type of music, but if you play piano and on musical composition, that is going to instantly change your perspective. When I started learning music, and then I put music with dancing, I was like, wow, this makes sense. This is why we move the way we move. So, for example, people to learn on two, they'll play the congas, and just the congas by themselves. And when you listen to the congas and you dance on two, you're like, oh, that's what's going on, and you immediately catch the timing, and and of course, when they're playing all the instruments all together, you can actually isolate the conga from everything else that's playing in the background. So definitely learn a type of instrument, either percussion of the piano.
That's amazing, man. Pretty sure it's the first time I've heard someone. I asked that question to all my guests, and I'm pretty sure you're the first person to say that, man. So that's super useful.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
man. Especially, for I guess a part of getting better at a dance is understanding the music. And so when you understand the structure of music, it helps you to, in my opinion, become a better dancer overall. So I
Yeah,
definitely understand that. I definitely understand that, man.
yeah, absolutely.
Brian, I wanna thank you so much, man, for taking time out your day, bro. And I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Oh no, I mean, me too, man. I really appreciate you doing it, and I think we need more people like you doing these types of things, and talking to the dancers. This is very important. So definitely, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, bro. Let me ask you this real quick, man. Do you have? I know times are kind of crazy right now, man. But do you have any upcoming events, anything that you want to plug? Let people know about.
So yeah, like you said, everything has been canceled for who knows when. But the next thing I had scheduled was for September for the Atlanta Salsa Congress, and we actually did like a section of the Atlanta Salsa Congress on video. So we actually did Zoom when the beginning of this whole thing started. So like maybe a month ago, we did that online on Zoom. But the Atlanta Salsa Congress is supposed to happen in September. I don't think it will, um, but who knows? And that's the only thing I have right now. And like you said, times are kind of crazy, so everything got canceled, and that's just the way it is right now. I hope we can get back to it, man. I miss dancing so much, man. It's crazy. But we'll see.
Man, oh my goodness, it's been a minute since I've went to dance. I guess at least social dancing, at least, just like everybody else.
Yeah, I haven't been a social dancing. The last time I went social dancing was back in late February, but I had an event in Atlanta, and that was it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see. I
that
feel
was
you,
it.
man. It's been too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you this, man. How can people get in contact with you?
So I'm all over social media. Brayonski on Facebook and Brayonski on Instagram. I told you the story about my name.
Let
And
the people know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do. I'm a soccer fan, and I play soccer all my life. Besides dancing, more just kind of as a hobby. So the World Cup I started doing on each World Cup, depending on the country it's at. I changed my name that to represent that country. And I started in Brazil. So when it was Brazil, my name was Bryanzinho. I know some people that know me since that long ago. They remembered that I had that name back then. And then I came to Russia, and so Russia is Brayonski a couple of years ago, and I've had it since then. And then I'm still thinking about the Qatar name for 2020, 2022. So if anyone wants to give me advice on a good name that I can change my name to a Qatar kind of name. So I'm taking I'm taking ideas right now.
Hey, perfect, man. That's perfect, bro. Like I said, man, Brian, I thoroughly enjoyed this, man. Especially hearing about your childhood growing up in Cali, man. I really enjoyed that, man. Do you have any last words you want to share with the people before we close this episode out?
Uh, be open minded.
Mm.
That is one thing that has helped me in my dance career. When I started dancing, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but when I started dancing Colombian style, that was all I did for a long time, and I frown upon any other dances. So I would see, I didn't know anything about timing, but dancing Colombian style. But I would see on one dancer and doing the turn parents and stuff like that, and that was kind of boring to me. That was like, I was completely closed to Colombian style. I was like, I don't want to do anything else until I started learning. And I started learning on one first. And I was like, okay, well, this is actually pretty interesting. I can actually use this in Colombian style. And I did. And then I fell in love with on two as well. And now I use on one and on two, and I break into Colombian style. And so that having all the knowledge of different rhythms has definitely helped me out a lot. So one thing that I will tell you, if you want to be a well-rounded salsa dancer, definitely keep an open mind to all the different styles.
Hmm. Okay. I think I definitely understand what you're saying, man. I think that is a great way to wrap up this episode of the Two of You podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to thank you so much, Brian, man. Thank you so much, bro.
Yeah, no, thank you. Like I said, we need more people like you.
Hey, come on, man. Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Please enjoy the rest of the day. All right, bro.
All right, peace out.
Hey. That's all it is. Hey everyone, if you made it this far all the way to the end of the video, I want to thank you so much. My overall goal with making these interviews and these episodes is to give a voice to dancers, to give them a platform to speak their story. So if this is of value to anyone, then that means the world to me. My overall goal is to give value to the dance community. So, if you find no value in this, then I urge you to please let me know where I can improve on. I truly want to, just give value and content to the dance community. So
please let me know how I can improve, where I'm messing up, because to be 100% honest with you, I'm learning along the way as I do this. I truly am. So to be able to interact with the dance community, it means the world to me, because it gives me feedback and it lets me know what I'm doing right, where I can improve upon, what I'm doing wrong, which I feel like might maybe more important. So please, if you all could comment and just let me know what you think, it means the world to me, because that feedback just helps me improve. So please comment as well. Please like and subscribe. That means a lot as well. But I want to say thank you so much for just watching this, because it means the world to me. I want to take you on this journey of the Two Left Feet podcast. I'm very excited for it. So once again, thank you so much.